Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I chat through a variety of subjects in respect of World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint and sit back and enjoy. And today's subject is all about raiding and the different sort of aspects that we're going to look into with regards to raiding will be guild raiding, why you would raid, the sort of time in terms of preparation for a raid, how long a raid actually takes, and then the good old-fashioned loot. Now the loot will come into the guild raiding, so we'll leave that for last. But let's get these sort of easier, simple ones out of the way first as to why you would raid. Now there's a few different reasons as to why you would raid. One of the main ones being for the aspect, like the social aspect of it. Some people within the World of Warcraft Classic community feel as if the community is the best part of the game, and they feel as if that is what the retail version of World of Warcraft has lost in its years because of everything to do with cross-realm. Now, with the community, you obviously find yourself a guild, you raid with them, you pug a couple of raids. Now, pugging a raid is basically where it's not a guild run. It'll be, I would have thought, 10, 15, 20 people from one guild are hosting a run, and there'll be 20 people or so, random people, that will join the run and make the run complete almost. That is what pugging a raid is pretty much. But there is very much the social aspect of it. You get the enjoyment out of it. There's a lot of fun to be had within raids, just the general banter within a raid, the general sort of chatter, the general sort of shenanigans that go on with loot, like pulling, like mobs. There's a lot of sort of intense fights where you might accidentally ninja pull another pack and then suddenly it becomes a lot more intense, like you have the risk of wiping, etc. So there's definitely a lot, and there's a lot of fun aspects to it with the social. Now the two big ones really though are, one will be for nostalgia. WoW Classic is a 15-year-old game. 15, 16, now that we're in 2020, or now that it is 2020 and it came out in 2004. I think it really started to pick up 2005 though, WoW. But it is a 15-year-old game, give or take. And some people were around in 2004, 2005 doing these raids, doing Molten Core, doing Blackwing Lair, and Anchorage, and soon Nexaramus. Like, some people actually did these raids, and ever since Burning Crusade come out, you wouldn't look to do these raids because they're old raids and there would be no point in doing it, etc. So, with the release of WoW Classic, it gave those players who were there in 2005 the opportunity to experience that entire, raid again, almost fresh. Even though you know the tactics and stuff, you're going through it again, which you might not have done as a proper raid for the last 15 or so years. People can go through it on retail, yes, that is correct. But on retail, you don't care about any of the mechanics, you just one-shot the bosses, get the loot, and get the transmog from it. So it's all about the nostalgic aspect of knowing the tactics and doing the tactics perfectly because you did it 15 years ago on a crappy computer and awful dial-up internet. So there is a real big nostalgic experience for some people. Now, for most other people, about, I'd say, 80% of the people who play WoW Classic, it is a new experience. Now, 80% is a bit generous. I'm probably not counting people who played private servers. So it's more about 60% of the current player base from retail coming into Classic have not done any of this like content as current tier. So 60% of the player base have basically never set foot in these raids and done them as an actual raid before. Because in retail, you go into the raid, it feels so small. It feels like nothing can kill you because nothing can. It feels so pathetic that when you enter it on Classic, it feels so much more... It has a much bigger presence, almost. It feels like it's towering over you, most of the mobs, and like they can easily just slap you about, but you are actually like learning and progressing the boss fights. So it's a really cool aspect to go through all of the boss mechanics. They are very simple boss mechanics, don't get me wrong, like loads of the boss mechanics are simple. Move out of the fire and trank shot him if he's enraged. That's literally one of the bosses in Molten Core. It's nothing too difficult, is it? Oh, and he fears. So what? Who cares? But like, it's not tough, is it? It's not rocket science. You just DPS him. It becomes a DPS race, like the patchwork fight in Nax. That's all that will be. But because it's still a new experience for that player base, for that 60%, it still feels as if it's very... You're doing something that is completely alien to you. Even though the raids in retail are more mechanically challenging. Very mechanically challenging, actually. Because you have to be constantly somewhere, you've got to be doing this mechanic, whilst that mechanic's like trying to stop you from doing that. Like, there's many different things with retail raids compared to classic raids that if people in classic tried to do them with their characters, you just couldn't, because there's no fluidity. Is that a word? Yeah, we'll go with that. There's no like fluid motions with your characters. It's very much stop, cast, stop, cast. With hunters, it's you stop, you have to fire arrow, and then you can run. Stuff like that. So, because it's still the new experience, everyone's learning. I mean, some people wipe, some guilds wipe on certain mechanics. AQ has just come out, Encourage. It came out about a month ago now, actually. But Cthulhu, the last boss in Encourage, is tough. He is tough. Like, don't get me wrong. Mechanically, if someone's standing in the wrong spot, it can wipe. It can wipe the raid. So Cthulhu has a ability called I-Beam, and this is basically a beam that will lock onto one target and he'll beam that target. That's it. If anyone is within 10 yards of that beam target, it will chain to them and it will do 1.5 times the damage. So, in theory, he can one-shot your entire raid with this beam. And the damage can scale, like, indefinitely. Like, it can go into the millions, honestly. Billions even, possibly, depending on... I mean, think about it, 40 people. It's for about 2.5k, something like that. 2k? No, 3k. It's about 3,000 health. So 1.5 times, it's 4,500 to the second target. To the third target, another 1.5 times. 1.5 times. It just keeps going. So it can actually go up indefinitely. But even like in Classic, there are some mechanics that can wipe you, and you need to be aware of them and know how to work around them. With that being said, we will move on to the time. So raids themselves, my guild personally, we take about 3 to 4 hours for a progression raid. Now, a progression raid is when the raid just comes out and you're going through it the first time, maybe second time. That's fine. That's progression. Everyone does that. Everyone needs to know the mechanics and stuff. We're not like a super hardcore guild. We're on an RP PvP server, so again, we're not PvE at all. We're just there for the loot and the fun and the shits of it, really. The shits and giggles and the social aspect mainly. But the one thing about the time for raids is not the raid itself. My guild have personally we do about under an hour run on Molten Core and Blackwing Lair. This is average. We're going to look to reduce AQ a lot quicker as well in the coming weeks. We'd like to hopefully get it below 2 hours within the next couple weeks. That's about it. So we set ourselves a little goal. But the time doesn't come from the raids itself. It comes from the preparation for the raids. So you need to make sure you have the right consumables, your potions, your elixirs, your nature protection potions, your stuff like that. World buffs. If your guild demand world buffs, you got to get world buffs. Now you have to go to Diamol and do a tribute run. That usually takes about 10-15. Not the tribute run itself, but to get to Diamol, if you get a summon, run back and stuff, it's about 10 to 15 minutes. Then you go to ZG Island or Booty Bay and you get a Zilgrub Heart Pop. And then you go to Stormwind or Orgrimmar, depending on your faction, to get your War Chief's Blessing or your Dragon Slayer buff. All of these different world buffs increase different things. So there's a couple from Diamol, which are really useful. One is 15% max health increase, and the other for me is 3% crit chance with cast damage. There's another one, but it's attack power, so I don't necessarily need to get that. With regards to attunements, though, this is another big thing. It's not just about preparing all your potions, getting your world buffs, and being ready to go off and actually do the raid. It's about attuning yourself to them raids. So with Encourage, the latest raid, there is no attunement. You can just walk in. That's it. That's really good. That's really good. That's the only raid in Classic that doesn't actually need an attune, I believe. Molten Core does. Let me rephrase this. You can enter all of these raids, apart from Naxxramas. You can enter all of these raids, but if you get attuned, you can teleport straight into the raid. Whereas if you're not attuned, you would have to run through very lengthy dungeons in order to reach the raid's entrance and be able to zone in. So it's really good that you get attuned, because it will take you forever. Trust me. But the Oni attunement, like Onyxia, this is a one boss raid, by the way, Onyxia. You need to do a series of quests that make you run back and forth to loads of places. You need to go into a dungeon and talk to a guy. Then you need to find a letter from some of the mobs within that dungeon. Take it back to him. Then you need to go and kill 2 bosses within that dungeon as well. Go back to him. Then you need to go out of the dungeon and talk to, I think, Bolvar and Stormwind. And then Bolvar sends you back to Windsor, which is in the dungeon. Then you have to escort Windsor out of the dungeon. And he has to find his armour and stuff. And it's grueling, to be honest. But you have to escort him, which takes about this escort quest alone. If you want to clear the entire path and then send him on the escort, with a normal group, not like all level 60s and like Blackwing Lair and AQ geared, it would take you 45 minutes. Is very generous, to be honest. 45 minutes is quite generous, but about that to even clear the pack, and then you can, all of the packs, and then you can start the escort quest. So it's a very lengthy process. And this is just to even get into one raid. It's not even that. After the escort quest, that's the big chunk of it. But you have to go to Winterspring. You have to trudge through a cave of elite dragons to talk to this chick on a mountain so that she can give you an amulet so that you can, go into the raid. Literally, it's ridiculous. Just the attunement to go into a one-boss raid. It's very good. Don't get me wrong, the attunement is very good and very fun the first time you do it. The second time, it's okay, yeah, come on, I know this now, let's do it. Third time, it's just, no, I can't even be asked now. So even in terms of preparation, it's not just about the potions and walking up to the raid, entering and starting killing. You need to make sure that you're attuned for it. Like one of my guild members wasn't on his ult today, that when he was going to come on his ult to Blackwing Lair, which was hilarious, to be honest. We did find that hilarious. But it's all about the prep in terms of raid. The least amount of time that you will spend doing anything is probably the time in the raid after you've gone through that progression phase of the raid. So it's very fun, to be honest, in terms of knowing that you're doing this quest line not just for XP but to progress and be attuned for this raid. So the Molten Core attunement is basically you have to go into Blackrock Depths, which is a 50 or 48 to sort of 60 dungeon, we'll say. 48, I'm only saying 48 because it's kind of what the mobs start at the start of the dungeon. But you go into the Blackrock Depths and you just have to pick up a little splinter almost outside of the Molten Core entrance. Now the Molten Core entrance is very deep within the dungeon itself, very deep. This is a 21 boss dungeon, I believe it is. Longest dungeon in the game. But it's so deep into the dungeon, I think it's just before the 19th boss, or the massive room where you have to find 2 torches and light the braziers to go into the second to last boss's room. So it's a fair distance. And then that's all it is for the Molten Core. You collect the item and you take it back to the guy. Nice and easy. Then the guy will just take you, teleport you to the Molten Core. That's it. Nice and simple. Blackwing Lair, again, very simple as well. You loot a item off of a rare NPC outside of a dungeon. It will give you a quest to go and click on this orb inside a dungeon, inside that dungeon that you're outside of. And then you're attuned. You can just zone into the raid. Nice and easy, by clicking an orb outside of the dungeon again. AQ, like I said, there's no requirement. You can just walk straight in. Nice and easy. I like that one. With Nax Ramus, I believe you need to pay a certain fee in order to be attuned, but this fee will go down in price depending on your reputation with Argent Dawn. So if you're exalted, it's free. They'll just be like, yeah, you're free to go and kill this guy that's been terrorizing us. No need to pay us. But if you're revered, you'll have to pay something like 50 gold and an arcane crystal or something. If you're honoured, again, it just goes up in price, 75 gold and an arcane crystal and something else, something like that. Friendly, 100 gold, neutral, 150. So it really does ramp it up a bit towards the end. It seems a bit stupid though, just thinking about it. It's yeah, you've got to pay us so that you can go and kill this guy terrorising us. Yeah, alright, nice, thanks. I don't quite get that. So again, a lot of the prep is from the achievements and just the prerequisite stuff that you have to do with getting potions and learning, or potions and world buffs, sorry. So it's a lot of the prerequisite quests that take up the more time instead of how long the actual raid is. Now we'll get on to the juicy part. So guild raiding. Now I raid with my guild. I've only ever raided with my guild actually. I've never been to a pug, strangely enough. But with regards to guild raiding, there's obviously the fun part. I say fun because it can be the thing that breaks your guild, or it could be the thing that, kind of solidifies the guild and draws everyone closer. But it's the loot. So there's two big sort of loot distributions. There's Loot Council and there's DKP. DKP being Dragon Killing Points. Now, my guild use Loot Council personally, and we'll go into that very soon. But DKP, I don't necessarily understand. I think there's a couple ways that you can use it, but from my understanding of that system, that loot system, is it takes into account how many raids you've done, what you do for the guild and stuff, and say you donate 50 gold to the guild bank, you'll get 5 DKP, something like that. If you show up for a raid, you'll get 50 DKP. If you do something bad, you'll lose DKP, or minus 25, minus 50, whatever. But with regards to DKP, it's kind of like a bidding system, like a blind bid. So if something good drops, say something really good drops, like Staff of the Shadow Flame from Nefarian in Blackwing Lair, every class that can use it, the Master Looter will go they'll link it Staff of the Shadow Flame, starting bid at 200 DKP, something like that, and then you would put your bid in. You'd whisper that Master Looter with your bid, and whoever had the highest bid would get it. So you don't see anyone else's. You're just putting how much you would be willing to pay out of your DKP in order to get that item. Which I do quite like, because there's that sense of like adrenaline. Like, I really want this item. How much am I willing to pay for it? I might be able to push it, but I might be able to like hold back for something else as well. Like if something else comes up. So there's that middle ground where it's like, do I go for it? Do I really go for it? Or do I just sit back and not even bother? It's a really cool system, don't get me wrong, but I mean, some people don't have enough time to go to every raid, so you might have people who are getting more items, etc. You might have people who are, I don't know, yeah, like I said, just have a lot more time on their hands. They might be donating to the guild bank more, might have more DKP, they just outbid everyone on everything, so there can be a couple flaws to it. You'd have to tweak it for your guild, I suspect, but it's not the system that my guild use. Now, we use a loot council system. So a loot council is quite fun. It's kind of like, I kind of imagine it as night, or not nights, but sort of you're at a round table and it's just everyone yelling at each other because they want that item prior to their class. So we have obviously a mage class lead, which is myself. We have a warlock class lead. We have a warrior class lead, rogue, hunter, druid, paladin. Believe they're the only classes. I can't think of any more. But we have all different class leads, and then obviously these class leads are the ones that represent their class in these loot council meetings. Now, everyone's more than happy to attend the loot council meetings. We open it up to everyone to sort of voice their opinion and like invite everyone to listen in so that everyone knows what's going on, etc. Which is, I think is a really good idea, to be honest. But with loot council meetings, we had one tonight. In fact, we go through each class, and the class lead will just say what they want to discuss. Now, it's hilarious, to be honest, because myself and the warlock class lead are very much the only caster DPS. I don't say that like me and him are the only ones in the guild. I say that as like mages and warlocks are the only kind of caster DPS we have. We have one shadow priest, or one soon-to-be shadow priest, I should say. That is the only other caster DPS. And we're very tame with how we do everything. So myself and the warlock class lead are very much like, yeah, like you have this, I have that. We share like responsibility, or like we share the loot on this because it's a big upgrade for both of the classes. This is a bigger upgrade for you, so it was prior to you, and then it will go to like our class. Sorry, I'm wondering what that like whistling noise is. I really don't know. I think it's a plane. Can you hear that? But basically, with regards to the loot council, we have myself and the warlock caster, or the warlock class lead, are very tame, and we're very sort of, yeah, that's fine, we'll do that. make decisions very clear-cut, very quick, and it'll be no problem at all. Now with physical DPS, that is where it becomes fun. So you've got a hunter, a warrior, a rogue, and possibly a paladin, all basically going at it. It's like, no, I want this to be prior to me. Now, warriors, I always think are hotheads. Don't get me wrong, I love some of the warriors in my guild. I absolutely love them. They're great characters. But I think of warrior, and I think real hothead, like, oh my god, that's mine. Get away from it. I will beat you up. That kind of thing. But it's just fun because the Loot Council meeting, I was sat there for about 2 hours. Me and the Warlock class lead said about 2 things that we just wanted to discuss. And them 2 things were discussed for literally a minute. And then it's like, yeah, you get that, you get that. Okay, cool, nice and easy. But in them 2 hours that we were sat there in that Loot Council meeting, the healer or the physical DPS, the warriors, the rogues, the hunters and the paladins, were all discussing one item for about 30 to 40 minutes. And they usually have about 6 or 7 items that they all share. And they're saying, we should get prior on this because it's better, big ticket stuff. And it's basically just a brawl. It's like, oh my god, this is so much better for us. You can't have it. Get out of here. And it's just great to hear because you can see everyone's sort of character coming out, and it's like, it just shows everyone, not true colours, but it shows the funny side of, and the sort of depth in which it goes into in order for everyone to get a fair share of the loot, if that makes sense. Take this example. So there's a mace in Encourage from the last boss, Cthulhu, which is a one-handed mace which has 184 healing, plus extra healing. Now, this is a one-handed mace, and basically we've decided that all healers get to roll on it no matter what. But this item was so discussed that it was so discussed. Sorry, I'm stuttering. I'm just in shock about why they've discussed this mace so much. It is a very good mace, don't get me wrong. But they've discussed this mace since before Encourage was released. They've said, yep, all healers should get prio. But it was brought up in tonight's Loot Council meeting and being maybe it shouldn't be all healer prio because if some don't have this offhand and some don't have that, and some might have this weapon, they're not allowed to roll on it. So even though it was kind of decided a few months back, stuff can still be brought up and changed because of how long it's been and how long people have had time to think about it. So Loot Council can get very technical and be very sort of personal, if that makes sense. It can be okay, mages just get this because it's better for them. Don't care about all of you. Do whatever you want as long as we get this. And then some warlock might take offense to that and then be but it is better in this aspect. And then you've got to argue your case and then it's another argument. It's kind of like going to court, to be honest. You got one who's the defendant and one who's the I can't think of the word. Accuser. We'll go accuser. But it's very cool in terms of you hear everyone shouting and screaming. It's I want this because it's better for this class, and I want that because it's better for this, and we should get that because we get ghoul in this raid and stuff like that. It's great. But again, I think looking at the 2 different systems, the DKP and the Loot Council, I wouldn't trade the Loot Council for DKP at all. Because with the Loot Council, I know what the priority is for these items, and I know that it's a fair share because the other classes will get that in return, but we get this. I know where we stand on them items, and it's not just a blind bid where I could possibly keep losing everything because I don't bid enough on that certain item. It's one of them things. I wouldn't trade the Loot Council for anything, to be honest. But that should wrap it up for this week. Again, it's a bit of a different one. I'm looking to go into many different aspects with the PvE scene, so I can maybe talk about dungeons or just the social aspect of it, depending on, I believe I've done the social aspect, but stuff like that. I can get into specific battlegrounds with PvP. I might look to do that, but it might be very tough to do an entire podcast on just one battleground like Warsong Gulch. I would definitely like to do more retail stuff in the coming future, and definitely look to do a sort of podcast on like WoW news. So everything that's happened within WoW within the past month. I'd very much like to start that up, possibly next week or the week after that. But again, thank you all very much for listening, everyone. I really hope you have a good day, night, wherever you are, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye all.